Former President Trump, meanwhile, announcing he has received a letter from the DOJ saying he is the target in the department's investigation into January 6th. Jonathan Turley is constitutional law attorney and a Fox News contributor and joins us now. We're all trying to figure out what to make of this. Jonathan, tell us so far what you do.
Right. Thanks, Sandra. This is a step that usually will come towards the end of an investigation. When you receive these types of letters, it often gives your client the opportunity to appear in a grand jury. They are never a welcomed thing to receive. Usually a target letter is before you receive an indictment. That's not necessarily the case, but it's viewed that way by most criminal defense attorneys. These letters often tell the target that they need to preserve evidence, that they need to look at counsel, and that they have a set period of time where they can appear before the grand jury. The concern here is that the special counsel could be proceeding on a case that might be constitutionally challenged. If the case is built around Trump's speech on the ellipsis on January 6th, I don't believe that it could withstand judicial review. The question is, does Smith have something else, something that's a direct link to a conspiracy or effort to cause violence? We haven't seen that. I mean, the January 6th committee in Congress came up with nothing as a direct nexus to that type of evidence.
We are getting word right now that we can confirm Jack Smith's office has said, indeed, that they sent the former president a target letter. That letter, though, that the former president, put out on his Truth Social page, a statement from Donald Trump calling Jack Smith deranged, saying the prosecutor with Joe Biden's DOJ sent a letter again Sunday night, he says, stating that I'm a target of the Jan 6 grand jury investigation, giving me a very short 4 days to report to the grand jury, which almost always means an arrest and indictment. Does the former president have a point about the timing of all of this in that letter?
Well, prosecutors don't always give a target ample time. I mean, they're not very accommodating in that sense. Part of the reason is that most targets will not go in front of a grand jury, and neither will Trump. I mean, it would be really loony to go in front of a grand jury like this. You're not allowed counsel. You're allowed to leave the grand jury to speak with your counsel. But I've had clients go into grand juries, and even when you tell them, for God's sake, get up and talk to me if there's a question, they rarely do so because they're there in front of 23 people and they want to convince them of something. But most defendants do not go into a grand jury.
Jonathan, just also the reaction that is pouring in. Asa Hutchinson, for example, just put out a statement saying that the former president should suspend his presidential campaign in light of receiving a target letter. Is there any reason why he should?
There's no legal reason why he should, and there might not be a political reason. Each of these indictments seems to give him a boost in the polls. I mean, this is fulfilling his narrative that there's a weaponization of the criminal justice system. That's why this indictment, if there's one coming, could be so important. With Mar-a-Lago, those were classic types of charges, a classic built case. This one, they have to really stick the landing so that no one will question it, or few people would question it. That's going to require some very direct and strong evidence. We haven't seen that. So if Smith doesn't have that type of evidence and he's moving forward largely on the speech, then I think he will fulfill the narrative of Donald Trump. He will be the federal version of Alvin Bragg in bringing that indictment.
That's a very interesting statement. So we're left wondering, based on everything you've just said, does this go anywhere? Does this indicate Jack Smith does indeed have something else? At some point, we will have to learn that very fact. When will that be, Jonathan?
Well, you'll learn that with the indictment, but there's been lots of leaks coming out. And, you know, we may be hearing whether there's something else there. Smith has a reputation of stretching the criminal code, sometimes too far. This is not an occasion for that. If you're going to indict the former president over January 6th, you're going to need a lot of evidence showing that he was doing more than engaging in a political speech. In my view, what Donald Trump said in the ellipsis is entirely protected under a case called Brandenburg and the First Amendment. Smith is going to need a lot more than that speech.
All right, Jonathan Turley, appreciate you joining us on that breaking news.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.